Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This might not be as scary as some of the other stories I've heard on this channel, and it could literally be anything, but I figured I'd share it in hopes that someone else has had a similar experience in northern Sweden. My name is Amelia, and I spent a fair amount of my childhood in the small village of Summiko, in northern Sweden. It's only populated by 100 people, at most, with most of them only using the houses as summer cabins. It's an everybody knows everybody kind of place. We'd spend our days riding around on four-wheelers and exploring the woods, so we knew the place pretty well. I even lived there when our apartment was being renovated. Anyway, at first, my family and I thought the house was haunted. The guest room always had this strange vibe to it, and nobody, not even the house's residents, slept well in it. Most agreed it felt like they were being watched. My cousin once ran from the room crying to sleep with me and my mom, even though her mom and sibling were in the room with her. It was the only room without curtains or blinds. I never opened the curtains at night because I was scared of the dark, and it felt like I'd see the face of a ghost pressed up against the window if I ever did. Most of the other kids agreed with me. As we grew older and overnight stays became less and less frequent, those things stopped bothering me as much. That is, until a few years ago. My cousin and I were riding a four-wheeler along a river that split the forest. The side we were on was trailed and somewhat populated, but the other side was untamed wilderness. Hunters would occasionally go there, but there weren't any footpaths or anything for hikers to take. As far as we knew, it was empty. We stopped by the side of the river to take a break when this loud, ear-piercing scream made us both jump. It was shrill and raspy, and I don't know how to describe it other than it just sounded wrong. I don't want to be the superstitious person who thinks they can feel ghosts or evil, but this scream brought an intense dread with it. At first, we were just startled, but as we replayed the scream in our minds, we decided to get out of there as fast as we could. Our parents told us it was just foxes or people, so my cousin and I kind of forgot about it. That was until I started reading about skinwalkers and other terrifying stories of creatures that lurk in forests. I listened to the screams of foxes and similar animals, but nothing sounded like what we heard. It echoed loud and clear and left a ringing in our ears. Maybe my mind is playing tricks on me, but when I asked my cousin if she remembers, she describes the scream the same way I do. It was just wrong, not like any human I've ever heard, anyway. I've worked as a nurse, so I've heard just about everything, from a newborn's shriek to the screams of a person with severe Alzheimer's. Now I'm starting to wonder if our fear of looking out the windows at night and the unpleasantness of the curtainless room had something to do with skinwalkers or some sort of banshee or ghost. I'm not a strong believer, so this won't keep me from driving through those woods again, but I'll definitely listen closely the next time I go out there. We've never experienced knocking on the door or voices coming from the woods or anything like that. That said, I'll always be cautious now when I'm in the woods. I'm from Europe, Lithuania. I'm a 27-year-old male, and I moved from a small city to the capital, Vilnius, a few years back. Let's start from the beginning. I came to the capital when I found a good job, so I needed a place to live. I was looking for rental apartments and found one, but it was in a very, very rough neighborhood. My building was filled with ex-prisoners, drug addicts, and people who were almost homeless. To top it off, the building was about 200 meters from where a group of gypsies lived, and all they seemed to do was criminal stuff like robbing and selling drugs. All in all, it was a terrible place to live. I contacted the apartment owner, who'd been renting it out for a long time, and we agreed to meet near the building to look at the place. If I liked it, I'd sign the papers. I met with the guy, and we walked up to the 4th floor, stopping by the door. I noticed that there was a sticker on the door, which meant that firefighters had broken in. I asked the owner why the sticker was there, and he said that one time, when no one was living in the apartment, the neighbors called the police because they'd started to smell something strange coming from it. So, the firefighters broke in through the window but didn't find anything. I kind of believed his story, but it was strange. We walked inside, and it looked almost brand new. Floors, walls, ceiling, shower, and toilet had all been redone. Liking the place, I signed the papers and rented the apartment. I should mention that the apartment was extra small. It had a kitchen sink, a fridge, a toilet, a shower, and a small living area, but it was only 11 square meters, 36 square feet. I had no friends in the city and no girlfriend, so I figured it was a place to start my life. However, the entire time I lived there, I felt strange, like something was watching me. I was constantly depressed, even feeling almost suicidal at times. Fast forward 10 months, I had a girlfriend, and my friend from my small hometown came to Vilnius looking for a job and a place to stay. I decided to give him an easy start, so I moved in with my girlfriend and let my friend live in my rental apartment for free, since he was broke. After a week, he told me that something was wrong with the apartment. He was usually upbeat and fun to be around, but he said that in that apartment, he felt incredibly depressed and suicidal. He even tried to hang himself using his belt on the radiator, but there was too little space to do it. After that, he avoided the place as much as possible, staying out all night or with friends. One night, he couldn't find a place to stay and came back to the apartment around 1:30 a.m. At about 2 a.m., he started smelling an awful odor, like rotting flesh, and the entire apartment suddenly became freezing cold. He was sitting in the dark, ready to go to sleep, when he noticed a small bubble of light floating in the apartment. He watched it until it sank into the toilet. After that, he borrowed some money from friends, rented a new place, and never went back. When I moved back into the apartment, I tried to stay calm. I was a heavy sleeper, but I often stayed up until around 2 a.m. I, too, smelled that same terrible odor and felt the same cold, but I avoided looking around the room. Later, I started smelling it as often as 4 times a week. Eventually, I decided to stop renting the place and moved in with my friend at his new rental apartment, where we became roommates. Sometimes, I still think about that apartment and feel strange about it. I believe that someone may have died there. Now, I live in a new place where I actually feel at ease. I'm from Central Europe. In my town, there's an old abandoned castle from the 1750s, built after the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was a hotel until the 1950s and has been abandoned ever since. It's not much of a tourist attraction, but people do visit occasionally. Anyway, as kids, we experienced some weird stuff there, mostly in the basement. The castle's interior isn't anything special. Sunlight always seems to fill the place, so it's not scary in that sense. But there are 2 main basements and a couple of hidden ones from older generations. Nothing special, just small rooms that look like places where you'd hide fancy booze back in the day. There's also a tunnel that leads to another village, built strictly as an escape tunnel. Now it's all blocked up by dirt and who knows what else. The castle's history says that a group of soldiers tried to escape through the tunnel, and others blocked them in, filling it with debris from both ends, about 5 meters deep. The tunnel itself is around 2 kilometers long. Not much was known about it until the 1960s when, as my dad says, the army explored the tunnel. They found nothing and didn't go more than 150 meters in before they got claustrophobic. The tunnel started 2 meters wide but narrowed after 70 to 80 meters, with tight air and some bricks falling out of the walls. In the late 90s, 2 homeless people died there, one in the basement, and the other probably fell down the stairs while drunk. Going down there is creepy, even alone on a sunny day, let alone at night. We tried it once and never again. I remember we'd explore before football practice, just wandering around the castle until we got bored and went down to the basement. You need a flashlight or some kind of light. If it dies, you can easily get lost and get paranoid fast, maybe even panic. Older guys from town used to mess around down there too. Once, they even broke the wall in the tunnel. They went a bit further, but no more than 10 or 20 steps because you start feeling the air pressure and the stench, like something died and came back to life only to die again. It was open for a few days in the mid-2000s, and everyone who went in said it was creepy, like someone was there with you. One day, a few of us went down there, and a kid thought it would be fun to run deeper into the tunnel to see what was beyond those 20 steps. We watched him go in. We could see his light moving, but not him. After 3 seconds or so, he was about 15 meters in, and then we saw his light turning towards us, and then back. He seemed disoriented, even though there were only 2 ways to go. Then he started yelling that he was lost. We barely heard him, and then he started screaming. One of the older guys went in with a light to guide him, and the kid started walking toward us, before suddenly collapsing. When we got to him, he was so pale, and he had this weird stain on his shirt, like a muddy mark, as if someone had hit him with a muddy log. The odd thing was, it was summer, and everything inside was dry, but maybe the tunnel was moist somewhere. We called an ambulance, but he woke up a minute later, saying how bad it smelled and that he felt someone was whispering to him. That's why he kept turning around. He described it as hearing us, but the whisper was something else. To this day, it creeps me out. Was it just his paranoia, or was he reacting to the air pressure? The tunnel was blocked the day after that incident, and I don't remember anyone entering the basement or tunnel anytime soon after. Years later, we'd still visit the basement when we got drunk at the castle. What's weird is that after about 5 minutes down there, you feel a kind of air creeping around your neck. You feel wind blowing inside, but on a normal day, there's no breeze in there, so where was it coming from? It's like someone is exhaling slowly behind you. It sounds like my buddies were messing around, but if they were behind me, I'd have felt or heard them. It's a strange feeling, like someone is there, even though they're not. Other people felt that eerie sensation on their necks, too. People say it's just the wind or shadows, maybe just paranoia, because of the basement's dark, cold atmosphere. I'd like to believe that's all it is, but deep down, I think we know it's not that simple. I live in Austria, Central Europe, and until I was 10, I lived in the city. But then I moved away to this little town near the city, where the area is kind of rural. The train is only 15 minutes away, but it's like a 40-minute train ride to the city center. There's a lot of fields, and the infrastructure is lacking. My mom and I were kicked out of our apartment, and that's why we moved to my grandma's place. Now I've been living in this small rural town for 5 years. My family always had a thing for ghosts, so the paranormal experiences didn't start when we moved to the countryside, they started way before that. But that's a bit of a different story. The house has 2 floors, and the living room is downstairs. The living room, kitchen, and dining room are all one room. There are a lot of windows and glass doors in that room, which is important for the story. So, like I said, I kind of grew up with the belief that ghosts are real, and my family always used to say that I was very special because apparently, I was able to see things not everyone else could. I know how dumb that sounds if you're not really into that kind of stuff, because it kind of sounds dumb to me too, now that I'm typing it out. But it really is true. There are a lot of paranormal stories to tell, and I'll definitely share more of them here. But I've decided to choose this very specific story because it still haunts me, even when I think about it. So, basically, it was the fall of 2011, if I recall correctly. Back then, I didn't completely live at my grandma's yet. I was at her place every weekend, but I still lived in the city at that point. My aunt and grandma lived in that house by themselves most of the time. It was the weekend, and my mom's boyfriend was there as well, because he wanted to see her. It was one of those weekends when the whole family was united. Before that day, a lot of weird stuff had happened. For example, we'd heard footsteps and loud bumping noises in the attic in the middle of the night. The whole family tried to play it off as nothing, because we were scared. Basically, that evening, we were all sitting together at the dining table and just talking. It was a typical horror movie setting. There was a storm outside, and you could hear our wind chimes at the back door. It was around 8 at night, but I remember it so clearly. We were sitting there, and all of a sudden, there was a knock on one of the glass doors, but the blinds were down, so none of us could see which door exactly it was. My mom's boyfriend got up and opened the door, but no one was there. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the back door. Everyone got up from the table and ran to the back door. My grandma opened the door, and again, no one was there. Now for the most horrifying part, as we were all standing in the hallway, my mom noticed something on the floor. It was a trail of blood drops leading away from the door, and the creepiest part was there was a small bloody handprint on the glass part of the back door. We still don't know what exactly it was. My family says we probably had a poltergeist in the house at that point. What do you think? It still really freaks me out, and the fact that I still live in that house and that the paranormal stuff hasn't stopped isn't really helping. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.